MKO Abiola stands for a lot of things, and the memories, of the party during the campaign leading on to the election are very significant memories to every Nigerian who was grown up at that time. But more especially for us who were parented by parents who were into politics at that time, because my father brought SDP along with 2 other friends to Niger State, and so our house was a hub for politicians, especially those affiliated with the SDP. I know that young people have passion, they want Nigeria to work, but there is no organizing in terms of movement building, which commenced from the cradle of the university to enable them come out. Look at what is going on now. Those days, civil liberties organization would have taken Nigeria, held it to ransom. How can anyone bomb a train and life will be normal? Not those days. Even for the sake of South Africa, ABU students trekked in protest. If you are growing in a context where you are shut down, you are gagged, you don't have a voice to speak for yourself anymore, that is not growing up, and that is not development. We would protest if the rice was not good. We would protest if we didn't have light. We would protest if our water ran and it was colored. We would protest if a lecturer was caught abusing a student. We would protest. What is wrong with a democracy saying, oh, now we are a democracy, now let's sit together and let's arrive at a constitution? How best can we run this country? What are the various interests we have? How do we arrive at consensus building so that we have a common goal and objective towards which to drive as a nation? How do we unify this country? How do we build patriotism in children from when they are born? How do we increase that sense of citizenship, a sense of belonging and ownership? Those were the things that republic should have done at the end of the military regime. People like Mariam Babangida have also not been celebrated. I know that she was a product of military regime, but I haven't seen anybody yet who empowered women at the scope at which this woman did.
Better life for
rural women. I believe that if we had preserved and nurtured the project, today we won't be lining up in front of the National House of Assembly fighting for 35% affirmative action. We will just need to say, women, rural area, wake up. And before you know it, we have taken over Aso Rock. From the origin of that history, that names a certain group of people bastards. How can bastard inherit something? How can bastard have a position? How can bastard lead? No. The person who feels legitimate is going to do everything to make sure this bastard child is not the governor. This bastard child is not a deputy. This bastard child is not a commissioner. They're going to do everything to keep away the bastard from the mainstream. And that is why we need to interrogate the sources of our history. Because I know that if my grandfather was to write his own history, that word bastard would not feature there.
It's another very wonderful, lovely day, a great day in the city of Lagos, Nigeria, West Africa, as we meet a very, very important personality, a woman of great achievement, an impeccable personality, a woman of impeccable achievement from Niger State, North Central Nigeria, a very beautiful woman who has so much in terms of dreams and aspiration for the youth and for the country, Nigeria. Today is Friday, 22nd of April, year 2022, and lucky enough, tomorrow, Saturday, 23rd of April, is the birthday of this great woman. I'm talking about Madam Dorothy Nuhu-AKEN'OVA. She's a presidential candidate, a linguist and a feminist, and she's the president, or let me say executive director, of the International Center for Sexual Reproductive Rights across Nigeria. And for the first time, we're having a woman with slim frame but big courage. She wants to become the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. She's one of the few bold, courageous female aspirants in this country, and we have to give her a lot of accolades. And today, after so much challenge, meeting her, reaching her, we are lucky to be with her today. Madam, I want to greet you and I want to say welcome to the show, Sub Sahara Africa TV. I'm very privileged meeting you today.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
First and foremost, who is this beautiful lady? Because a lot of people will see the beauty, but they will never imagine what is behind that beauty, behind that face. But who is Dorothy Nuhu-AKEN'OVA?
Let me include CESNABMIHILO in the name, because I know people have trouble pronouncing it. So okay. It's CESNABMIHILO Dorothy Nuhu-AKEN'OVA.
CESNABMIHILO. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I think is that a French name or?
That's Gbayi name. People call it Wari, but I'm Gbayi.
Oh,
that's what we call ourselves. So I'm Gbayi. I'm CESNABMIHILO. Feminist, evangelist, mother of 3, let me say, young men. I am a women's human rights activist. I am a founder of a non-governmental organization called INCRESE. For a long time, I have worked on the human rights and well-being of marginalized groups, including women and young people. And I love Nigeria.
You love this country,
Nigeria. Love Nigeria, die. And that is why I'm also a presidential aspirant for the 2023 elections.
Under which party are we looking at?
Social Democratic Party, the party with the white horse. And I like to talk, and add that white horse bit.
Because horse,
yes.
I think it stands for strength.
It stands for strength, it stands for resilience and grace and royalty. But most importantly in the Bible, it does stand for, the white horse that the Prince of Peace rides.
Yep.
And it is then the Bible says he is faithful and true, and then answers a name that only he can pronounce, So that white horse has lots of significance to me.
And that's why you have to run under a party that carries the logo of the white horse.
Oh, yes.
I'm very surprised that you are doing it under the party that produced Bashorun MKO Abiola with the Hope 1993. Is there any correlation between you and the legacy of MKO Abiola, SDP? SDP is supposed to be one of those parties. It's a great party in those days, but now everybody, when you remember SDP, Social Democratic Party, you remember MKO Abiola, you remember Hope 93.
Oh, yes.
So are you saying that you are giving us a Hope 2023?
A hope, and beyond that, a restoration.
A restoration.
Restoration. Restoration.
Okay, restoration. Okay.
Yes, we are trusting God to restore Nigeria to the right path. Yes, MKO Abiola stands for a lot of things, and the memories, of the party during the campaign leading on to the election are very significant memories to every Nigerian who was grown up at that time. But more especially for us who were parented by parents who were into politics at that time. Because my father brought SDP along with 2 other friends to Niger State. And so our house was a hub for politicians, especially those affiliated with the SDP. So for me, it's nostalgia, you know, coming back and working on this party to make sure that, you know, a new meaning is brought to it.
Let's quickly look at growing up. I mean, you grew up in Diko town. That's in a village called Diko.
Yes.
In Cairo, in the Niger State. And I know Niger State geographically is a very big, it's a big place, a big state, and all that. Can you recall memories of growing up, and how did you fall in love with the Nigerian project, the Nigerian dream?
Like I said, my father was a very committed politician. He was into emancipation of marginalized population, because as a Bagi tribe, we have always been oppressed.
I know,
you know,
I'm aware. We're going there.
And then being a Christian, you know, from the north is again another ballgame altogether. And so I remember all those challenges that my dad went through, doing this struggle and investing of himself and his resources. And he passed down the values onto us that taught us that Nigeria was worth investing into and sacrificing for, because it was a huge sacrifice that he made. And so I remember moments where we had rice and beans with no oil and with no pepper, with stew, because Dad had put in all his resources into politics. And I remember growing up with these formidable brothers who were epitome of love and strength and protection. I remember growing up also struggling to be like my brothers because of the differential in upbringing. I grew up to be told several times that even my younger brother was more important and superior to me, and that when it came to inheritance or household, he stood as a male member who could inherit the house. And we as girls were going to be married off into families, and you know, whatever happened to us, you know. So that is very heartbreaking to remember, especially now that I know that everybody is better informed, including my brothers. I forgive them.
So that memory made you feel you felt so bad about there was this kind of perception that you are a second-class citizen.
Yes, and you know, my brothers were encouraged to go to secondary school, because from secondary school they could go to the university. And there was emphasis of me going to Women Teachers College so that I'll come out and be a teacher. I love to be a teacher. It was my dream to be a teacher. But I didn't want the way they were framing it. I was to be a teacher so that when I get married, I'll stay and be a homely housewife and have time for my husband and children. And I could look around and see what was becoming of women who were modeled like that in their upbringing. Meanwhile, the men would go, do their university, buy a car, get a good job, have good salaries. You know, and I felt like, wow, that life was better. And it was better that I struggled to be like my brothers.
So that really pushed you psychologically, and you wanted to just have a good, balanced life.
Yes, you know, a good job, a good pay, have my own house, have my own car. You know, I really, freedom, I think is pushing it too far. I just needed a good life. If that translated to freedom, that was fine. But I didn't see why I had to sit and wait to marry a man who will buy the car and build the house and probably dash me a car. I felt like I could do all those things by myself. And so I pushed myself very hard as I could. And I thank God today, looking back, that those dreams have been met.
You took that courage. Now, growing with your dad and mom, who among you two had much influence on you? I think you grew with, all of you are 6, you know, about 4 boys, 2 ladies.
Yes.
Okay. So which among the two had influence on you?
Wow, I think that somehow they managed to achieve a balance in parenting, and I give them kudos for that. My father was a very highly driven and principled man. He drove himself so hard that he graduated the same day as my oldest brother. He just would not sit down with his grade 2 you know, from grade 3 to grade 2 to grade 1 to NCE to university. It took a long time, and he persevered, you know. And I know that he didn't have tolerance for people outside who would treat me abusively. Twice I witnessed him rough handling and even beating up people who didn't treat me with respect once I reported to him. So I knew that, you know, he was a disciplinarian. He didn't take nonsense, but he was not going to sit idly by and watch someone from outside treat his daughter in a shabby way. But you know, my mom, such a sweetheart, you know, but a disciplinarian too. And she encouraged me a lot. She was a very, very good mother and a very, very good wife. I remember her taking up, you know, support roles in the house when my father didn't have a job anymore and didn't have, you know, income except his pension. My mom would work very hard to make sure that we had everything we needed. So if it came to good wrappers, good gold earrings, you know, good hairstyles and good shoes, my mother was invested in making sure that we had everything we needed, so we didn't have to long throat after things from people outside. So I'd say, you know, there was a balance in the approach and the impact that they had on me. And I appreciate the fact that they pushed us and made sure that if it was education, anywhere you would go, even if it's Jupiter, they would support you to go there and get the education.
Or your mom in nurse, what was their business? Dad, what was into?
My father was in education. He was a civil servant. My mother was working as a full-time housewife until we were grown up, when she got a job as a matron with a government girls' secondary school.
She wanted to just give you the balance, homely balance. So that I think that was a fantastic.
And she's very entrepreneurial also. You know, she made kunu for sale, zobo for sale. They had a poultry, they worked together on it. They had a goat farm. You know, they worked together with my dad on it. And she did many things, and she still trades. Anyway, she's over 80 and she still has a cement shop, and she makes sure she wakes up in the morning, goes to sell her cement.
That's a great woman.
You know, so when it comes to entrepreneurship, I could see that from my mom. She believed that people should have multiple sources of income and not depend only on one source, that salary. And that was a very good lesson to take from her.
That you learned from her. So why did you decide to read French at the university? Why did you decide? What drove you? When growing up, what was your vision like? What were you thinking of becoming in the near future?
Ambassador.
Wonderful.
I wanted to work in the Foreign Affairs Ministry so that I could travel abroad, you know, foreign mission and all of that.
That's good.
And I thought that reading French was just the right way to go, you know. So I was interested in French language as a result of that.
And that's why you choose Ahmadu Bello University?
Everybody in the family went to Ahmadu Bello University. My senior brothers did, my father did, you know, so I did too. Yeah, and in terms of proximity, it was quite close to Niger State. And then Kaduna to Zaria.
So what, can you recall some nostalgic moment in the university, growing in that community, how the university prepared you for leadership in life? University environment.
University environment, I actually took part in campus politics, and I was a Senate member representing Amina Hall, and that was nice.
That's a historic hall.
Oh yeah, it is.
Because we have another Amina Hall in Unilag too.
Oh wow, it copied debut. Yeah, so the politics was there. The politics was nice. The student union movement
at the time
was something else.
Efficient.
Oh my God. We ensured that human rights were protected, not only of ourselves within the confines of the campus, but even spilling out into the society. You wouldn't pass by idly when you witness an abusive situation as a student. And in the Faculty of Social Arts and Sciences, that was a grooming ground for activism, with people like Bala Usman, with people like, Professor Wilmot, with lecturers like Firine. You know, it was fantastic. It was a grooming ground for analytical thinking and processing. There was no one who would have passed through fast at that time and would not become somebody in Nigeria. You know, it was, I look at those moments with so much nostalgia when I see the fact that if one campus had problem, all campuses took it upon themselves as though it was their personal problem. There was no way Ilorin will be fighting a cause and ABU will be in lectures. There was no way ABU will be fighting a cause and Ibadan will be at lectures. You know, so those are moments that I cherish a lot. They were grooming ground, and there was no tolerance for bad governance at all. If a government was reckless, the student union was enough to draw them back to order. It's just a shame that today that movement has been de-energized.
De-energized, watered down, rattled, maybe politicized.
De-energized, you know, completely. Because I know that young people have passion, they want Nigeria to work, you know, but there is no organizing in terms of movement building, which commenced from the cradle of the university to enable them come out. Look at what is going on now. Those days, civil liberties organization would have taken Nigeria, held it to ransom. How can anyone bomb a train and life will be normal? Not those days. Even for the sake of South Africa, ABU students trekked in protest from Zaria to Kaduna on foot and back. That is the kind of, you know, university life that I remember and I cherish with all my heart. And I desire same for the people who are growing up now. Because it is not growth. It is not development. If you are growing in a context where you are shut down, you are gagged, you don't have a voice to speak for yourself anymore, that is not growing up and that is not development. We would protest if the rice was not good. We would protest if we didn't have light. We would protest if our water ran and it was colored. We would protest if a lecturer was caught abusing a student. We would protest, and everybody's issue was our issue. There was nothing like sex for marks. I can't even start thinking of all those lecturers who are like parents to me, having that kind of conversation. Sex for maths. There were rules. You do not go out with your students. It was a rule, it was a policy, it was a regulation. Students knew it, lecturers knew it. If anybody attempted it, they were disciplined and their jobs were terminated. I have recall of instances like that. It's not like today. Those are moments that I cherish.
But the way you are saying it now, I feel so bad. I feel so emotionally harmed for all what is happening in our society now. You look at the newspaper, you look at the online news, the reviews, breaking news and all that. You hear about lecturers persuading or trying to force students to sleep with them before they can graduate and all that. You know, and I want to ask you that, looking at the SUG today, whereby you see an SUG president is a political machine or a political mercenary of a politician, and they are buying him a car of 25 million, a politician is sponsoring him, even at his inauguration there's gunshot and all that. How do you feel for university life, especially recalling your own days in the campus? How do you feel? Do you think that campus politics, what is affecting the social, general politics, has also affected the campus politics?
You know, this military dictatorship was a very harmful trajectory for Nigeria. It was the military that had no tolerance for different opinion or differing opinion that single-handedly immobilized the student union. They co-opted it and co-opted it and started singing praise and giving gifts to student union ESCO that were able to contain the rage in students in order not to have strikes or demonstrations. They made them have easy access to the vice chancellors. They spoiled them with gifts of cars, with money. Right before our eyes, when I had graduated and I was lecturing in ABU, I had no car. President of student union was driving a car. Many lecturers didn't have cars those days. But that was the process of corruption, and that is how it began. And it was supposed to render the union powerless, so that all these plenty complaint, protest about things that were not going right can cease. And it was also not limited to paralyzing the structure at the level of university, but also paralyzing the entire human rights movement, because we grew from that platform into activism in the larger society. So if we were already compromised as students, then what are the chances of coming out and becoming activists in the society? There were no chances at all. So it was a systematic destruction of the willpower of the people to hold government accountable. And that has persisted till today.
But don't you think that the politicians also, added their own, unfavorable, what they call it?
They have perpetrated
because it's 1999 until today, the return of the democracy in 1999. It appears that most of the politicians have even made it more terrible by, you see, group of people, governors, engaging SUG leaders into co-opting with political activities, even in the states or at the federal level and all that. So don't you think the politician also added their own value?
They are perpetuating it. What I was doing was giving us a historical background of where it started from. The politicians are repeating the same thing that the military people did. The unfortunate part is that since we started our democracy in 1999, we have not sat down to demilitarize the way we are engaging with the democratic structure. And that is why security vote till today is not accounted for. That is a military mentality. We need to demilitarize. There were conscious efforts in the beginning working towards that. So when you see people and say, Monsa, we'll tell you, no, we don't do that anymore. Even language within development sector, we were beginning to re-engineer words. Like you don't say, I want to target a population, because that is a military language. So there is work still to be done. Because what we have done so far is embraced that military culture, its language, its ways of running affairs into a democratic system, which is hampering our democratic growth and development. And that is why the student union is being dealt with the way it is happening now. Ordinarily, that should be where people are groomed to acquire precepts, principles, ethics of democracy, so that when they come out into larger society, they are groomed and ready to take over from their grandparents who are now refusing to leave the scene, because they have totally compromised the capacity of the people who should come and take over from them. It's a deliberate attempt that is being made here to cripple our growth and development and keep people oppressed and leaving them at the level where they are. While the few bourgeoisie and they continue to live big lives themselves and their children.
A life of unquestionable, a questionable acquisition. They acquire wealth, and nobody can ask them to account for it. Governors live in power, and they have much companies, they are into oil, they are into gas, they are into all sort of businesses and all that. And now when you look at that Nigeria, what was the Nigeria of your own dream? I don't think we're on the way to that kind of Nigeria.
No, not at all. We seem to be moving backward, actually, from the dream that I have for this country. I never in my life imagined, never, that there will be indiscriminate shooting and killing, and that bombs will start exploding anywhere within the country. In 1984, when the French government offered me scholarship to go to France, I was asked to go to Grenoble, which is in southern France. And while I was preparing to travel, I read from news that there was a bomb blast in a restaurant, in a cafe in Grenoble. And I came to Lagos and I complained to the French embassy. I said, I can't go there, I'm afraid, because I heard about this bomb blast. They changed my university to northeast of France, where it was calm and tranquil, you know. So I could never, ever have imagined that I would sleep and wake up while people are being slaughtered next door in this Nigeria. We have derailed completely from the dream that we had. I looked forward to a country where we would rival the great nations of the earth. In fact, it used to offend my senses when they called Nigeria third world developing. I felt offended because I had a dream that we would grow into a country that can stay side by side with countries like United States of America, with countries like Britain. When I went to France, it was no big deal. Our naira was 10 naira to 10 French francs to 1 naira. 10 French francs to 1 naira. I came back after 1.5 years, and the money had become 4 naira to 1 French franc. That is a nightmare. It's not at all anything that I imagined or dreamed that we are going for now. No way. No way. And it's very sad and devastating that we are putting our youth through this type of Nigeria. This is not at all what I grew up in, and this is not at all what I imagined for my children and their, peers. I imagined that, like my older brother and myself, by the time you graduate, 4 jobs are waiting for you. You choose one. And they are busy tantalizing you. Look, we will add a car. No, we will give you a 3-bedroom flat, and we will send you abroad for a course. That is where we were graduating into. This is nothing compared to what we imagined. We imagined an industrialized Nigeria where we are busy producing everything we consume. Look at those textiles. In my fine art department, I learned how to do patterns. And my dream was, one day these my patterns, they will take and do wrapper.
Can you imagine?
Where are the textiles today? Where are the industries today? Where is even our cotton farm? Because it is from the cotton farms right here in Nigeria that we were feeding the textile companies. What has happened? We have derailed. This is not at all anything close to Nigeria of my dream.
Where do you think the problem started, and who do you think are the progenitors of this political crisis? I mean, a lot of people, yes, you've mentioned the military, but under which particular system? I mean, you grew up, you were born in the 60s, and I believe that from early 70s, you started seeing your environment, you started seeing Nigeria. Okay, maybe I should reframe it that which government do you think was near to it, and under which government do you think things started decreasing politically?
I don't think that we have, at all pushed our strength to the kind of potential that we have. I don't see any government that has maximized on the potential that we have as a country. We struggled to move from military to democracy. I was an adult when that happened. We fought for it. We struggled to make it happen. We did not want a situation where civilians will come and be operating a constitution that has been handed over to them by a military. What is wrong with a democracy saying, now we are a democracy, now let's sit together? and let's arrive at a constitution.
Okay.
How best can we run this country? What are the various interests we have? How do we arrive at consensus building so that we have a common goal and objective towards which to drive as a nation? How do we unify this country? How do we build patriotism in children from when they are born? How do we increase that sense of citizenship, a sense of belonging and ownership? You know, those were the things that that republic should have done at the end of the military regime. But we took over this constitution that had bogus provision for people in power, which corrupts absolutely. How can you be in the House of Assembly and be getting home millions?
I'm surprised.
Until now that we are broke as a country, that has not changed. Are we that senseless that we do not know that we should cut down on our spending because we are broke?
They still buy all the lavish car,
the same number of escorts, the same allowances for newspaper, for clothes, for gardener, for cook. This is unfathomable. Like say we no go school. I don't blame the man who said our mumu done too much. It doesn't make sense at all. In your house, if your salary is 5,000 naira, and for one reason or another, you lose that job, immediately you will come home, you will start reviewing, this DSTV I used to subscribe, full bouquet, 10,000. I not do like that, let me go and get Star Times. That one is 3,000. We will start making adjustments, but we are not doing that as a nation. We are not running the nation like people who know how to plan. How do we expect the youth to have a sense of belonging? How do we expect their potentials to be maximized and tapped for the purpose of development? How do we expect people to sacrifice and invest in a nation when we have robbed them in broad daylight of their humanity and of their human rights? We need to go back to the drawing board. All the governments, I'm holding them accountable for not having done the needful to make sure that we have progress.
The governments, from time to time.
All of them.
But do you think if MKO Abiola have been sworn in, do you think they would have been changed, or is it a misguided opinion?
You know, when I look at the principles of the Social Democratic Party, and going back in time, believing that at that time people still have some conscience, I believe that something would have happened. Because he had grown an empire, Concord newspaper, that bread that we used to enjoy eating, that used to be baked in his bread called bakery. You know, all those things were there. He was employing several people. Wonderlove. And he had this airline as well, Concord. Yes, and he promised to, run Nigeria and create job opportunities just like he had done as an individual. So imagine a nation where youth have jobs. Imagine all these employment opportunities, and that young people are being fit in there based on merits. Not because your father's name is so and so. That is the kind of Nigeria I imagine MKO would have built. Because the Social Democratic Party stated since its foundation that it was meant for social justice. And if he was to go by the principles laid down in the manifesto, in the agenda of the party, no doubt we would have made progress. The question, however, is would he have abided by that? Or would the external influences and the cabals and all of the oligarchies, would they have influenced or derailed him? But I know that MKO was a resolute man. I know that he was a man who was very determined. Only a man of integrity can hold on to the mandate of the people to death. It's a value. a principle to the point he said, I am not giving up on this mandate. I'd rather die. Even in face of death, he held on to that mandate. It shows you the character of the man that we are dealing with. There are people who wind go just blow for the roof small, they don't surrender, finish. This man chose not to betray the trust and confidence that Nigerians had reposed in him. So I have a belief, looking at this type of character, that Nigeria would have not remained the way it is now had we had the opportunity of having MKO Abiola at the helm of affairs in Nigeria. He had the goodwill of people. Everybody loved him. Imagine the football club.
Okay, Abiola Babes.
Abiola Babes. You know, tell me, which president there now that has that kind of record? You know, which one? No, Nigeria would have had good days with Abiola in power, no doubt. Even if it was just for the mere fact that he was an epitome of values. Hold on to your value, come what may. That is the substance of a person. You don't shake with wind and you don't blow left and right. No, you hold on to your values. He did that. If that was all he did to ensure that people growing up have that sense of dignity and worth, and that their values were clarified and they could hold on to them, Nigeria would be a totally different place.
And do you think in his death is celebrated and appreciated enough?
No. There are many people who have done marvelously well for Nigeria that we have not appreciated enough. And Abiola is one of them. Ken Saro-Wiwa is one of them. You know, they did so well ahead of their years. They had vision, foresight, okay, you know, but we haven't celebrated them adequately. We ought to teach this to our children. What is wrong with history, for goodness sake? I don't even see children coming back home with notebooks to say, I read Nigerian history. This history needs to be taught. It is very important and significant, because if we don't know where we are coming from, we will continue to grow aimlessly. Because these leaders will come, they will tell us lies, we'll follow them. But if we have history and it is clearly taught, then these young people who made the mistake in 2015 en masse would not have done that, because history would have warned them. That is not the way to go.
So history will have recalled them into the right direction.
I believe so. We need to begin to teach Nigerian history. And all of these people who have done amazingly well, we need to remember them. We need to celebrate them up to the point at which they need to be celebrated. You know, and that is why I think that people like Mariam Babangida have also not been celebrated. I know that she was a product of military regime, but I haven't seen anybody yet who empowered women at the scope at which this woman did.
Better life for rural women.
Life for rural women. I believe that if we had preserved and nurtured the project, today we won't be lining up in front of the National House of Assembly fighting for 35% affirmative action. We will just need to say, women, rural area, wake up. And before you know it, we have taken over Aso Rock. All these stories of women don't support women, women don't vote for women would not have been there. Do what Mariam Babangida did and see if the whole women in Nigeria will not vote for you. There are many people who have distinguished themselves, who have served this nation, that we haven't celebrated enough.
Their memories are just forgotten, or people just move on with life.
Yeah.
Let me, before we go to your presidential day, let's go back to the Gwari people. There is this perception that the Gwari people are marginalized in their own land, especially in Abuja. There have been different issues. In fact, recently I think there was that issue in the National Assembly that they should give them something, like maybe lands and some other things like that, some commendations, political considerations and all that. And so people were shutting it down. You know, all the, what is the problem with the Gwari people? They appear to be very distinct people, you know, but they appear to be marginalized. I cannot say that. So
that is not a problem with the Gwari people. That's the problem with the system.
Oh, the system.
Know, and you know, injustice to one is injustice to all. You just need to wait before it will reach your turn. Very soon it will reach your turn, and that is what we are suffering from as Gbaji people. Gbaji people are present in Niger State, Kaduna State, Nasarawa State, the FCT, and Kogi State. That is a huge population of people.
Almost 6 million.
So why are we marginalized? And in all the states where we are present, we are marginalized. Why? And it's not like we don't have educated people or qualified people. But you know, when I remember history, and the history of Banza Bokwe, the 7 bastard children, of course, the ones that call themselves legitimate cannot treat you with any worth and respect. If your name from history is Banza Bokwe, we need to rewrite these books. I won't write my history, I'll call myself a bastard child. We need to rewrite those things.
Bazagi Kera, Sunanki, Banza Bokwe.
Babu, Sam. And where did you pick that from?
Now
very soon you will speak Bagi to me.
The Spirit just led me now to speak.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
You know. So that is where the problem lies. From the origin of that history, you know, that names a certain group of people bastards. How can bastard inherit something? How can bastard have a position? How can bastard lead? You know? No. The person who feels legitimate is going to do everything to make sure this bastard child is not the governor. This bastard child is not a deputy. This bastard child is not a commissioner. They are going to do everything to keep away the bastard from the mainstream. And that is why we need to interrogate the sources of our history. Because I know that if my grandfather was to write his own history, that word bastard would not feature there. And that is where the problem emanates from. And that is why today my people are complaining, because they've not been treated, we've not been treated fairly. Of course, we gave the land for FCT.
Yep.
We are happy we did that.
Yep.
But imagine what happened for resettlement.
I think that's what
the Gbaji person used to have a compound, and the compound had different huts. If he had 3 wives, each wife had a hut. The girl children who are below the age of adolescence had their own quarters. The ones that were big had their own sleeping room. So did the boys. Now you are resettling a Gbaji person. You build a mini flat cubicle and tell that Gbaji person to wrap all that into one roof.
That's
3
quite
wives.
impossible.
With how many children?
The privacy is not complete.
They had their farmlands. Those farmlands have been taken over. So if you give me that cubicle, where do I go to farm? And if you say I shouldn't farm anymore, what have you given me in place of that farming? What opportunities have you used to replace that exchange? And that is why we are saying we have been undercompensated. So it is time for us to take a second look and see what we can do to redeem what has gone wrong. Let us write it. Let the people have what they are entitled to. Let them have equal opportunities. And equal opportunity is not that when you give this person 2 cubes of sugar, you give the one who is diabetic 2 cubes of sugar. The one that is diabetic probably doesn't need any more sugar.
Yep.
So give to everybody according to their needs. That's what we are saying. If you have dislocated people and dismembered them from their settlement, you have scattered and reorganized their lifestyles and patterns of interaction, including their sexuality, then it is time for us to look and say, no, injustice has been done. Let us correct it. The fact that we leave it forever does not normalize it at all. We need to revisit it.
That's interesting. And I do think you can get that kind of justice under this political arrangement in Nigeria now.
Yeah, I believe that we can make a presentation at the House of Assembly. And, you know, people do resolutions and tender to them. People do memos and tender to call attention to certain situations.
Political anomalies.
Yes, so it is possible. If we do have people who have conscience in the House of Assembly, they would see the truth in this argument and they will pursue it to make sure justice is done.
Let me quickly take you to your presidential dream. At what time did you decide that I want to be president of this country, and what kind of courage came over you? I mean, what was the spirit behind this? I mean, for a woman with a very you know, wonderful stature like yours. I don't want to say big or small stature, but I mean, a very wonderful and a good, you know, high level of enthusiasm, of course, but what propelled that courage to say, I want to rule this country, and why?
I have watched, as you have noticed, that I am of an activist background. As a feminist, I am capable of seeing injustice where it dwells.